Additional flight.
Last Saturday night, the curtain came down on one of the most famous venues in Australian motorsport. For more than 50 years, the Sydney Showground has been regarded as one of the world's best speedway arenas. But now, with the sale of the Showground premises, that reputation has become the stuff of legend. Andrew Voss was on hand when the dirt flew for the last time.
One last hurrah. The Speedway faithful turned out in force. It was a final chance to pay tribute to some former champions. The Sydney Showground that had first echoed the sound of Speedway racing in 1926 was saying goodbye. Well, this is it. To Speedway fans, the hallowed arena. Now, in the glory days, the 50s and the 60s, this was the place to be. The crowd would jam-pack into every vantage point to taste, to watch, to really savour the best the sport had to offer. We're talking about crowds of 25 and 30,000 every Saturday night. And as you can see, it's certainly not pretty. Basically, what you see is what you hit. But this was the Sydney Showground. It had an atmosphere all of its own, and it was most definitely the showpiece of Australian Speedway. The Showground was once home to the nation's first motorsport world champion, Lionel van Praag. A daring rider, he was hero to many in the 30s and 40s. In 1946, a young man started his racing career at the Showground in speed cars. His name was Jack Brabham. Long-time writer and Speedway historian Dennis Newland remembers the halcyon days. Well, Dennis, the fact that they got packed houses, what made Speedway racing at the Showground such an event?
Well, I think it was the atmosphere when you get a capacity crowd here at the Sydney Showground, and I guess it was a bit like you know, the danger element involved too. Open cockpit speed car racing in the 50s and 60s, 40s, 50s and 60s. I guess it was a bit like watching a tightrope walker at a circus without a catch net. And of course, I've always likened the speed car drivers like World War II fighter pilots in the era of the 60s speed car racing here. They were very brave men, there's no doubt about it. I've always believed that the golden era of speedway racing in Australia was right here at the Sydney Showground. And people such as myself and a lot of other speedway supporters throughout Sydney and Australia that have followed racing here, well, we are really the lucky ones. There's no doubt about it. We saw it at its absolute peak when you couldn't get another person into the ground, and every Saturday night was speedway night as far as the Sydney Showground is concerned.
If only for one night, that golden era was relived. Speedway at the Showground had always been a grand show and an essential part of the action with the sidecars. In keeping with the night, the new had to share the limelight with the old. Among the former greats, Doug Robson, a 3-times Australian champion.
You know, there's no place like the Showground Speedway. I mean, as I was saying, you come down these straights so fast and you thunder into the corners, you think, oh, I'm not going to make it, and just hold your breath, you know, it's just so fabulous. And you had such good riders like Bingham, Bobby Levy, Dougie Timon, Glenn Innes, Gary Innes. You know, you had to have your wits about you. Just about every scratch race final was like an Australian championship.
Another hero on show was solo biker Jim Airy. The crowd paid tribute to Jim, and he paid tribute to the Royal. Jim, what has made the Showground so great?
Well, it's probably one of the greatest arenas of speedway in the world, probably because it's a showground. The pits with the bikes used to warm up underneath it, and it's gone for so long. Look, it's got a lot of history. It goes right back 70-odd years, you know, and the Sydney Showground was the speedway.
What about those test match days? You were very much a big part of the test match.
Yeah, well, the revival of the Test match in '67, we had a lot to do with it. There was 30,000 people here for the first Test match against England, and I think that had a lot to do with the nostalgia of the Sydney Showground, the revival of the Test matches, England, Australia, the old enemy, and there were some terrific spirited races around here those years.
Completing the Showground's triple act were the speed cars. These mighty midgets leave nothing to spare. It's full throttle and then some. If you look closely, the racetrack walls still carry the scars of previous battles. For the fearless who crave close racing, there's no better place.
Once you walk in those front gates, it's like a city unto itself, and the atmosphere, the memories that are around this place, the amount of people who have been victorious. A lot of people have been hurt and killed here, and but you can never build in the atmosphere that's here. A lot of other racetracks in the world have tried it. Indianapolis is same sort of place as this. Monte Carlo in the Formula Ones, and Bathurst in the road racing. But the atmosphere, you can never build it in. The place has got to earn it.
And it was the speed cars who provided the final event. As the field rolled up for the start, you could be excused for thinking the ghosts of the past were there watching. Almost 70 years of racing had come down to this. At the end of 50 frantic laps, it was the seasoned veteran Gary Rush who claimed the title of International Speed Car Derby champion. A prolific winner in Australian Speedway, Rush had tasted victory at the Showground, racing for the same team in the late 60s.
It's nice to be the winner at the last race of the Sydney Showground, and it's going to be a great memory in my mind.
Gary, do you think it's almost destiny that it had to happen? One of the veterans had to win?
You could say that, yeah. I think so.
Does this now become, and there's plenty of history, Gary Rush at the Showground, does this now become the fondest memory?
It's up there with them. Yeah, I've had a lot of good times in sprint car racing and midgets, and but I tell you what, this would have to rate one of the biggest wins. It's the biggest crowd I've ever raced in front of.
Will there ever be another Sydney Showground?
Never be another one, no. Never, ever.